What's up, everyone? This is No Croissant with your host, Chicken Man, or Chris. And?
Hello, I'm David, host of Talking Toku, as well as other things.
And my name's Nick Huber. I run a Godzilla 98 page on Facebook, and I'm also a big fan of the 98 film in the series.
And this is our special guest, Keith Aiken.
Hello, everyone.
So, Keith, you were an artist for Godzilla the series, which will be our
I was a
topic of
storyboard
discussion today. So you were a storyboard artist and I believe did you also do like some production artwork, I think?
No, I did storyboards, did a little assistant directing, kind of unofficially. The production side, just to let you know real quick, the show was already pretty heavily into production by the time I joined the show. They were just ramping up, hiring new artists to do storyboards, and by that time point, like the production work had pretty much been done.
Right. So, I guess like a big question I've been wondering is, have you always been like a Godzilla and like Tokusatsu fan, or is this something that you discovered shortly after being hired for this series?
Oh, I've been a fan all my life. I could talk your ear off about this part, but basically, short story is I was born in Wilmington, Delaware. Delaware was a small city, so basically all the local stations were Philadelphia.
Right.
So it was not even the same state. The Philly stations in the when I was growing up in like the 1970s, going into the early 80s, loved to show Japanese programming, and by that I mean like dub stuff. Godzilla movies, Gamera movies, Ultraman, Speed Racer, Battle of the Planets. So I grew up with, those movies were on, weekend after weekend. Ultraman and the anime stuff was on 5 days a week after school. And I just loved it. I loved all kinds of sci-fi and monsters. But the Japanese stuff really clicked. And I think it might have been because there was so much of it. And also you had, Godzilla at that point was in 15 movies.
Right.
While most American monsters are in one, so you get that recurring thing. You get Rodan crossing over with Godzilla and things like that. So when my family moved out to California, as I got older, I started doing comic book artwork, ended up working at Dark Horse, where I bugged the hell out of them when they were doing Godzilla to get a chance to work on the Godzilla stuff.
You're responsible for Godzilla versus Charles Barkley, aren't you?
Yeah, that was one of the things. They knew I wanted to do Godzilla. The regular series hadn't launched yet. They kind of sheepishly said, "We've got Godzilla versus Charles Barkley coming up," and I'm like, "I'm in." I like the commercial. I prefer serious Godzilla, but I don't get weirded out when you do something that's a little more comedic. It's anything you can go any way with that stuff. So it was fun, and it was my first chance to do that. So I got to do that. Then I did an issue of the ongoing series when that started. Based off of that, I then found out a few years later that Sony was going to be doing an animated tie-in to the movie they were working on. So I applied for that in 1997 and got hired right after the movie came out. So it would have been like June or July of 98.
Right.
So I went in like almost a full year. Submitted a resume, showed them my Godzilla artwork from the comics and things like that, knowing it was going to be a different design and everything, but still showing I can do Godzilla.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering that too, if like this was like a position you intentionally seeked out, or maybe this just fell into your lap as like a happy accident. But it's cool that they hired you based off your Godzilla work.
Yeah, it was really nice. It was when I first went and applied, I basically had a friend named Tom Coker who I'd worked with in comics for like Marvel and DC. And he'd gotten hired at Sony to work on, I want to say Men in Black, the animated series. So he was like, they got Godzilla's like next year. And so I'm like, all right, I'm coming down, So he brought me in for the interview. Right across the street, the hallway in this office building was the production office for the 98 movie. So I knocked on the door and asked if I could come in, and they said no. I explained who I was, what I was doing. And you know how private, how secretive they were about that movie.
Oh my
So
God.
all that was outside was they had a little thing on the door that said Big Fin Productions.
Oh.
That's what they were calling themselves at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the cool things though is when I did when I applied for the job, Tom then took me over to the Sony lot because the animation offices weren't at that time, at least anyway, weren't on the main studio lot. They were like a 10-minute walk. So I got to go over to the studio, wander around, and we ended up on the subway set for Godzilla.
Oh.
Very cool.
Where where the subway tunnel, they're calling through where they're trying to find the eggs, and they just finished filming. So, or no, yeah, they just finished because that was '97. So they had the tunnel with the debris. You look up like 3 stories above your head's a subway train hanging off of the tracks. It was really, and it was in a massive soundstage. It was really impressive. So I found out they were striking the set soon because they had finished filming. So I stole a rock. So they had these styrofoam rocks that were all over the place from Godzilla bursting and digging through the tunnels. So I have one little rock from the set of the film.
Oh, you still have them?
Cool. They're not gonna miss it.
Yeah, it's actually still on my shelf right behind me right here.
Oh,
very
great.
cool.
This isn't going to help the anime on, but here you go. Exciting, huh?
Yep, that looks like a rock to me.
Yeah, we'll
It looks like a rock.
if you don't mind, we'll show a picture of it on the screen later.
So yeah.
Yeah, I have a few.
I can send you a photo if you want, but
yeah, I have a few
it was a
miniatures
great thing
myself.
coming in as a hardcore fan to work on this stuff. You know, that was a dream come true. You know, and
Yeah,
it's
for
really cool to spend a year and a half working on the cartoon show, basically realizing I got a 40-hour-a-week job and I'm getting paid full time to work on Godzilla. You know, it's just that's really cool.
I mean, that's every fan's dream, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, the world's kind of small, especially this fan base. I mean, we know a bunch of people that make their living just off Godzilla, which is their hobby.
Yeah.
Like Matt Frank, for example, Jeff Zornow, like all these, huge fans growing up end up working on this IP, and it's so nice to see.
Yeah, it really, you feel blessed, that I think, and I've been lucky since I worked on the show. I've worked on a lot of other Godzilla stuff and Ultraman stuff, and it's one thing I'm like doing it. I'm going like, I can't complain. This is,
Yeah, I mean, we heard
writing
down
liner
the
notes for an Ultraman disc set, or doing something on a Godzilla Blu-ray.
I mean, we actually have that written down that you worked with, I believe, was it Mill Creek on the Ultraman
Yeah,
set?
working with Mill Creek now. I'm working with them now on the Ultraman, so I'm basically involved with all their Ultraman stuff. But back, I want to say 2012, 2014, somewhere around there, they had sub-licensed a bunch of Sony stuff. And it was basically home video companies like Sony, or Disney. You can only put out so much product in a month. Otherwise, you start competing with yourself. So the studios tend to focus on the big stuff,
Right.
the movies that have made $200 million or $1 billion or whatever.
Yeah.
So older library stuff, cartoons, things of that nature, they have no problem with the smaller studio licensing that stuff. So Sony bought this giant library of like hundreds of titles, and one of the things was Godzilla the series. So they reached out to me, and I ended up on the show. I gave them the artwork. Yeah, I basically, I have all that artwork, so I gave them all the artwork
Right.
they use for the packaging. And then I did things like I made sure the episodes were in the correct order. Since, as you know, they didn't air in the correct order. They were produced to run a certain way and aired as the network decided.
Seems to be a problem with a lot of 90s animated series.
We actually have a copy of the complete animated series right here, along with a couple other DVDs, but I believe only the complete series is the one released by Mill Creek.
Yeah.
And that release is super interesting
Sony
because
did a few of those like random episode sets.
Yeah, we have some of those too,
Yeah.
like the Monster Wars trilogy and Monster Mayhem.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about the complete series DVD is that it includes 2 unaired episodes, which, as far as I know, were pretty much like lost in the vault until that DVD came out, which is super interesting.
Yeah, they it was kind of a weird thing. It's like, to explain why the shows didn't air in order in the first place is that the networks look at like there's key times for where they monitor the ratings for shows. So during those times, they want something they know is you want to put your best out. So like the Monster War trilogy was like probably the high point, the big event of that series. So they wanted that to run during a peak's rating time. Also, when you're coming back from like a long break, you want to have like a show you were particularly high on or the start of a new season. So unless a show has a really tight continuity where it absolutely has to run in a certain order, they'll break it up that way. And they'll go like, well, instead of doing this, average, Monster of the Week episode, let's put the Monster Trilogy here during a peak ratings time and things like that. So it's easy to move around. So you'll watch an episode and it'll have a monster in it. And then like 3 weeks later, you watch an episode and they introduce that monster, and it's, that kind of a thing. And then just because of the shuffling around, it ended up 2 episodes never aired. So I know we ended up showing him at a couple conventions like G-Fest. We showed one of them, I believe, and another one in Asian Fantasy Film Expo that they did in New Jersey. We showed the episodes there. But in terms of broadcast or being released to the public, I do think the DVD set was the first time.
Wow.
Was it? I feel like I remember.
I actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you guys. I was going to say I have a funny story about the last episode. So it did end up on YouTube, and this is way back in the early 2000s. So what happened was somebody, I guess, at one of the screenings recorded the last episode where they're in the arena of the water beetle and
there you
the
go,
monsters he fights. Yeah, that's how I saw that episode. But when I tried looking for it on the early 2000s DVD sets, like the Monster Mayhem, and there was like a Mutant Madness one, I couldn't find it. So I wondered for the longest time, like, what did I imagine that? Was it made up or something?
I
and
want
then
to say
the DVD set comes out and I got it.
Yeah.
I want to say, I don't know what, it was probably Netflix. I want to say I saw at least one of those unaired episodes when the series was on streaming, I think Netflix, but
Yeah, it was on Netflix at a point, and they probably would have had them all then.
Yeah, and I think that was before this DVD set came out, too.
Starting as a streaming service, so I don't know how many people got to see it that way.
Yeah.
But the plan was, too, for the show to go into syndication, and for whatever reason, it never did. And so that was another reason why the episodes didn't have a super tight continuity, is because in case they got jumbled, you could watch it, after school or whatever, and it would be, be able to follow it fine. That. Yeah, it was nice to finally get the complete set out, though, available in a way where a lot of people could see it, and so I'm glad I had a small part in that. And so what's next?
So going back to I did want to finish some of the questions I had for you.
Okay, go for it.
So I heard that you had Thanksgiving dinner with Godzilla.
Oh, yes. That was quite an experience, because what it was is we were doing a gigantic Godzilla film festival. I was doing it with, just real quick, I don't know if people know, but I co-run a website, SciFiJapan.com, where we work with a lot of the studios because of the relations built up from doing things like Godzilla the series. I got to know Toho. And then through that, we were able to launch the site where we're running a lot of content provided directly from Toho and Tsuburaya and these things. My co-editor is Bob Johnson. He lives in the Bay Area of California. And for Godzilla's 50th anniversary, he was the main organizer. He put together a gigantic, 10-day Godzilla festival where they showed, pretty much every movie available, plus the, side stuff like Rodan and Mothra. And we were able to bring a lot of guests out. And it was falling right before Toho was going to do the world premiere of Godzilla Final Wars, which was going to be in Hollywood. So it was like 3 or 4 days. The convention would end 3 or 4 days before the premiere. So one of the guests that came out was Satomu Kitagawa, who played Godzilla in the 2000s films, including Final Wars. And he was a really great guest of the convention, and then we were going to drive him down to LA for the premiere, but there was a dead space between, which was Thanksgiving weekend. So my family's in Sacramento, so I called up my mom and I said, "Hey, I'd like to come up and I'm going to bring Godzilla with me." My mom goes like, "I always knew that was going to happen." That was just kind of the So it was just, we brought up, and it was funny because in Japan, particularly as a stunt person like him, he does not eat big meals.
Yeah.
So he was blown away by an American Thanksgiving. And then he had to be real careful because he had to squeeze into the Godzilla suits at the premiere.
Of
Because
course.
they did the whole Walk of Fame, getting the star. He was in the suit for that. So we had to make sure we didn't fatten him up too much. But he got along great with my family. And then a funny thing was, a friend of mine was a writer for E! So the E! Entertainment did a news article about Godzilla having Thanksgiving. So it was just a funny moment. Like I said, he was a great guest. He ended up, because of the time difference, he'd been pretty well acclimated to California time by that time. But it was like, I remember he said that he went to bed, he stayed at my parents' place, and he went to bed, and in the middle of the night his wife called, and he was completely incoherent. And he just hung up on her because he was so out from the time difference.
Oh my God.
But yeah, it was great. He was a really great guest. We still would, touch to this day. It's just kind of fun to go, I'm bringing Godzilla to Thanksgiving,
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like an
one of those
incredible
weird
experience.
fanboy moments you never think you're going to have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've met Kitagawa a couple times at conventions, and he's always like one of the most down-to-earth guests I've ever met.
I think he goes by Tom at G-Fest.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I think the first time
Yeah,
I was
he
at
goes by Tom.
G-Fest, when I was at G-Fest 2013, during like the opening ceremonies, he was like, "Call me Tom."
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember.
We at one point were sitting where him and the other guests would do signings, and at one point we were sitting at a table and it was between things, so it was just us, and we were both just sitting there bored, so we were doodling, and so he draws really well.
He does.
And so and so he was drawing and I was drawing. We looked at the other way, we just traded. Like, so,
You did an art trade of Godzilla.
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, basically just little Godzilla heads backward.
Yeah,
And he's also a really good sculptor. He sculpted a little like Godzilla head, and he ended up giving it to Tom Hanks. Yeah.
What?
So there's
What?
a picture online where Tom Hanks holding up a little Godzilla head like this.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
I gotta track that down.
Oh, man.
That's
I
the
gotta
first
find
one.
that
Yeah.
photo.
Yeah, Chet Hanks probably
It's a
turns
great
into
photo.
a bong or something. Yeah, so you actually did mention this a little earlier about I do have written down that you are the co-founder, editor, and producer of Sci-Fi Japan, a toku-centered news site. I remember this
Yes.
website from probably like when I first got into Godzilla when I was like around 12 or something. I remember this website, used to read it all the time. You've interviewed pretty sure a few notable people in this community. I remember you even interviewed my buddy Jonathan Tchaikovsky on the animated Toyline, which we'll probably get into another episode. So I guess like
Jonathan's a great guy, and man, does he have a collection.
That's an understatement.
It's one of those times where now that I know that and when I was first talking to him, it seemed like he was kind of like buying, and I don't want to say hoarding because that has kind of a negative impact, but he was like, he would have like 12 versions of the same thing, like it's different stages. And so at some point, now that I know he occasionally sells pieces, I would actually love to get a couple of the Godzilla series pieces off of him. Just, I remember seeing those when we were working on the show. They would bring in photos and artwork of the preliminary designs, and just gone, oh, these would be great. And then, they never happened. So it was great through Jonathan getting to meet him online. He was at the time really willing to share information and photos of the toys. And then we got in touch with people. He knew people at Trendmasters. We got in touch with some of the concept artists. When we did that article, we were able to run artwork that hadn't been seen before. And I learned a lot, just talking with Jonathan, because since the line got canceled, it was kind of, that was like a dead thing. It was really nice to see how good some of those pieces were, particularly Cyber Godzilla. I think that one looks fantastic.
Oh yeah,
Cyber Godzilla is gorgeous.
Yeah,
well, that's like the golden idol for Godzilla collectors, I think.
Yeah, and it's like I don't have one. I think no.
Yeah,
I'll have to like now start looking to see if I can get one. I don't know how many are flowing out there, but I assume Jonathan would know.
Probably
a
has like half of them.
limited number. We will say that. There are some people that are, some people are like shoddily trying to like remake it in like ZBrush and like 3D print them, but yeah, it's not the same thing.
Yeah. I guess even reproduction at some point might be nice, but it'd be good to get an original if you can.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a shame. YMSF. I don't know. Have you ever spoken to them before?
Dude, who was that? I'm sorry.
YMSF. They make toys for
the
Toho.
company.
Yeah. Recently he expressed interest in making Godzilla the series toys officially licensed.
That would be fantastic. It's I have good friends at Toho's LA office, and so I talk to them from time to time. And my understanding from when I worked on the show was that Sony owns the show,
right?
But they can't. It's in a way that they can't make more. They would have to renew a license with Toho, which never going to happen. Toho owns the likeness and character, so they own that version of Godzilla, and I believe they own the monsters as well.
Right. I think I read somewhere once that like usually when they license out Godzilla, they always own like all the new monsters or something. Maybe I'm completely making that up, but like I think Toho,
works,
like I think Toho has partial ownership of Muto and stuff like that, or usually they do in like a typical situation.
I know there's like because the contracts are always different from project to project, but I know that my understanding is the Hanna-Barbera was a similar situation. So like Toho actually now owns that show. The rights like expired. I think Hanna-Barbera had it for 25 years, and then it went to Toho.
Yeah.
So so that's why Classic Media did a couple of the DVD releases around 2004. Those were through Toho, not Hanna-Barbera. And then Mondo did that figure recently of the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla. But I know Toho still says there's some wording that's a little vague, so we have to be careful about how we handle things, just to make sure that someone doesn't come by and try to sue later on.
Right.
I assume that's why they've been re-uploading them on the Godzilla YouTube channel rather than like doing a full DVD release.
A few years back, I think Hanna-Barbera. I remember they managed to sneak in Godzilla in one of their comics, in like a panel or two.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were supposed to.
Oh, you mean Marvel or?
No, I think Hanna-Barbera had a comic series with like Marvel or something. I don't remember what publisher.
I think DC, because the whole Warner Brothers thing. I think DC was doing a lot of Hanna-Barbera stuff, and I think Godzilla was in the background of some shots. There's that kind of thing,
right?
Sometimes you can get away with it, and sometimes you can't. It's like usually if it's a little like in-joke thing, they'll just let it go.
Yeah.
Right.
But after I worked on Godzilla series for Sony, I worked on Big Guy and Rusty, which was an animated series about two robots that's based on the Frank Miller comic. And there was a scene in that where they go to the movies and it's a monster movie. So I was like, well, why don't we just have it be a Godzilla movie? So we had it be the Sony Godzilla. And then we had to run it by Toho, and Toho said no.
Oh, that's a shame.
So we had to like do that thing kind of almost like Tsuburaya did in the old Ultraman shows. Slap some horns on it. So there's still a monster, and it's kind of like it's almost Godzilla, wearing a costume, basically.
Right. And
make it a TriStar Giris.
I mean, speaking of the toys, though,
TriStar Giris, yes.
Speaking of the toys and licensing, there actually was.
I actually have the rejection letter still. It was very polite, but
that's good.
It was funny because I was the one that pushed for it. So the producer of the show called me into his office, or her office. I'm sorry. And he goes, "Here, this is for you." And it was a rejection letter from Toho.
I would have that framed.
Honestly, yeah.
I'm like, all right, fine, we'll change, that kind of thing. So that was the whole owning the character. Like Sony couldn't do anything with the character outside of a specific Godzilla product. But yeah, it's fun. You get those little weird little backstories and things like that.
So speaking of ownership and licensing, there was an obscure set of toys that were released for Godzilla the series. I don't expect you to have too much insight on them, but are you aware of the Carl's Jr. Godzilla Toyline set?
I am. It was an interesting thing. It was Jonathan Tchaikovsky actually has one of these, and I'd love to get one of these too. It was a sales book. Basically, it was their guide for merchandising.
Right.
for the series. He has one for Godzilla, the '98 film, and for the animated show.
Right. The style guide.
And style guide basically. Yeah, and what it was is, they were like, here's all these things you could do with the show, and obviously they had to deal with Trendmasters, so Trendmasters had begun work on, that line. But the merchandising for the '98 film, most of it underperformed. Some things did really well, but for the most part, stores got stuck with a lot of Godzilla figures. And so there was very little interest in merchandising for Godzilla series. So I know, you had mentioned it earlier, but there was a couple like Game Boy games
Right.
that came out around the time of the show.
We have one of them right up here.
There you go. So, and that I think at the time the show was on was pretty much it.
Yep.
On the official website for the series, they did a web comic that was ran maybe the equivalent of 3 pages. If you guys haven't seen those, I could probably send those to you. I think I still have.
I've never even heard of it. So yeah,
I've heard of it. I don't think I've
either.
read it.
The artwork was quite nice on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, after that, oddball stuff would pop up. I honestly had no idea about the laser tag thing you guys sent me the commercial for.
That was an interesting thing we just found the other day. So
yeah, it's because it didn't happen in my area. When I was living in Los Angeles for the show.
Yeah. So Discovery Zone.
The Carl's Jr. stuff.
I think I'm a little too young for Discovery Zone. It's is it like a Chuck E. Cheese type of place, indoor?
Yeah. It's
yeah.
Just looking at the commercial, it looks like they just took big blow-ups of the production art, and used it as the things you're supposed to shoot.
Yeah.
So, but it's cool. I mean, again, as part of the art team, it's really cool to see that stuff, up there. But I was familiar with the Carl's Jr. stuff because I either stumbled across it when they were doing the promotion or someone told me about it. But I ended up going in and, buying multiples of all the toys because someone had actually done it. And they came out in 2000. So, I mean, the show wasn't even on the air anymore. It was just a weird, I don't know who at Carl's Jr. decided to move forward with this or, there's nothing to promote. It was a weird time. But I ended up walking into the producer, Audu Payton, who was one of the producers on Godzilla, the series. I walked in and said, "Do you know anything about these?" And I threw them on his desk. And he was like, "What the hell?" So he's like, "I guess I'm going to Carl's Jr." So I do have a set of those, and I do have because there's a lot of promotion from the '98 film. So I have the Taco Bell toys for those, and obviously the cup holder and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
So
one of the things though is not in terms of merchandising, but since I was a Godzilla fan, coming in and working on a Godzilla show, I kept everything. So I have all the character designs, and I sent you guys some of that stuff so you could use it. I get, however you need to promote, this interview. Production artwork. I had the model sheets. I had the series Bible. I have all the scripts, and then I have all the storyboard packs for each script. Things like a color, when they're doing color tests, I have a little sheet that shows color tests they did. So I just kept all that stuff. So a lot of it ended up in the article we did for SciFi Japan. We're checking now that I'm working with Mill Creek. We're checking to see if the assets they got from Sony are high enough quality to possibly do a Blu-ray release.
Ooh, okay.
That would be the thing. It has to be. You don't want to just slap old stuff on a Blu-ray and go, here you go. Right. You want to make sure it fits. If that is, then I've talked with Toho, and we'll probably try to include a lot of the artwork that I have for my personal collection as a bonus feature on there. But that's very up in the air at this point. We'll see. It's one of the things I've kind of brought up, and they seem interested. I guess the series sold well when it did DVD all those years ago. Right. So it would be the same transfers. It just has to make sure that they're up to snuff.
Yeah.
For the other, So
well, I mean the series is.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Nick.
Go ahead. Okay. So I didn't want to interrupt anybody. I'm sorry. So
we're all talking. It's fine.
Okay, cool. So, but my question is, how did it feel going from the Dark Horse to the '98 Godzilla and Godzilla series? In your opinion, with that different radical design? Because I'm really curious about your opinion of that.
Well, it was an interesting thing. It's I'm not the biggest fan of the '98 movie. There's parts of it I really think are well done. the design, it basically became so different. It didn't feel like Godzilla to me, I guess is kind of but it's one of those things now where you look at the whole Toho thing from the first Godzilla, and then you have, Shin Godzilla in the 70s versions, and, Godzilla Millennium, and the design changes so much from film to film and everything that, I just kind of consider this to be like a Godzilla, now it's kind of, that's how I look at it. My opinion's kind of softened over the years. When we did the animated show, there was a lot of people who at least were casual Godzilla fans. They had watched, the movies on TV growing up, or whatever. And they wanted to bring in some of the Toho vibe to the show in terms of like the monster's tougher. He doesn't get wounded as easily. They really wanted to get away with him running away from stuff. They felt that was very anti-Godzilla. I can tell you that there's 2 teams of like story editors who basically wrote a lot of the scripts and then also supervised all the writers who worked on the show. And one of them is the guy named Bob Skier. He was partnered with another guy named Marty Eisenberg. And Bob Skier is a big-time Godzilla fan. He might be, I would probably say I was the hardest core Godzilla fan on the group, but he would be a pretty close second. And he was the one when he was writing the first episode, had Godzilla's fins light up and the monster, breathe the radioactive fire. When that got sent to Devlin and Emmerich for review, Dean Devlin said, "Ours doesn't have that. You can't do that." and Bob's response was, "This is a kid's show. It's called Godzilla. Everyone knows Godzilla's fins light up and he breathes fire. We have to have this in the show." And Dean went, "All right, fine." And that was basically, I know Dean and Roland were very involved early as the show was being developed, because it was being developed at the same time the movie was being shot. So they and Patrick were very closely involved early on. By the time the show was really rolling, they were pretty hands off. I've never met Dean or, like I said, I know Patrick. I've never met Dean or Roland. They never came to the studio or any of that kind of stuff. I did meet some of the actors. I met some of the voice actors, including I'm totally gonna blame the guy that played Craven. I'm totally I know his name and I'm blanking on it right now. The actor from the movie, played the part on the show, and he came by the studios a couple of times and we chatted and stuff like that. And very nice guy. Tom Kenny's become a really good friend of mine. And
Malcolm
he's doing
Daenerys
so well with SpongeBob. What was that?
Malcolm Daenerys Craven. I don't know if I butchered his name, but
yes. He came by one time to go to lunch with one of the producers, and I of course recognized him immediately and just said hello, and we chatted about the film, and he was having a lot of fun doing the show. He liked it, continuing the character, and so he's a very nice guy. Said, Tom Kenny, I was a fan of the TV series Mr. Show, the HBO comedy sketch comedy show. And Tom was one of the stars of that. We met. He's also a big Godzilla fan, so we kept bumping into each other at Godzilla events. And then I met him at a Halloween thing and introduced myself, and then we hung out, go out to lunch and stuff like that from time to time. And obviously he's doing so well now with SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah. I mean, for those listening that don't know, Tom Kenny's the
smart guy.
In Godzilla the series. He voices Nigel, which is Craven's little robot buddy, who's also the Kenny of the series. Basically, dies every episode.
Yeah.
I think he made it through one episode. They finally said enough or something. He survived.
Gotta give him one win. One win.
Yeah. But yeah, he's a good guy. So it's like, and that was fun. I like the characters in the show. This is kind of a funny story, I guess. When I first got hired there, I had to go apartment hunting. So I was crashing at a friend's place in Santa Monica, and I had to drive into Culver City. And so one of the days I was listening to the audio, they gave us cassette tapes back then of the whole audio for an episode, because those would be obviously recorded before we started drawing. So we could try to match, obviously, the visual to the performance. When they record those, when characters are fighting or running or falling, or they'll record them doing grunting and moaning and gasping
Oh God.
forever. Because then they can pick and choose whatever works best for the show. I was stopped at a red light
Oh
with
God.
my sunroof open, my windows down, blasting the thing so I could hear it over the radio, when Monique launched into about 4 minutes of gasping and moaning while I'm sitting at a red light watching everyone's head turn towards me.
Oh no.
And just kind of like shrugging, you know. Later on, I thought of the line I should have said, yes, I like to listen to porn on the way to work. But you know, it didn't come out. It's like, you know, but just it was one of those great moments where, like, again, not expected, but you know, it just worked out that way. Those I have too. I don't even know have a cassette player anymore, but I still have like maybe 7 or 8 of the audio tapes. You know, where you have all the full dialogue and everything. It's pretty funny. So.
Yeah. So I did want to mention one more thing before we actually talk about the show itself.
Okay.
The namesake of this episode. Now that we're 37 minutes in, we'll talk about the show soon.
Take this and edit every you need. Just, you know.
I did want to ask you about. There's a screenshot of you floating around the internet that's been floating around for a good few years now, regarding the Zilla name change controversy. I have written down.
Oh yes.
Could you tell us what led to you dropping that massive truth bomb, and also maybe explaining what the Zilla name controversy is?
Yeah, it was basically they, you know, obviously, you know, Devlin and Emmerich had done their Godzilla. A lot of hardcore fans and casual fans, I guess, felt it didn't really embody the character the way it should have, you know. And at one point, I want to say, you know, the character did give it nicknames like, you know, Gino, you know, Godzilla name only,
right,
and a lot of that kind of stuff. I want to say it was Ryuhei Kitamura that directed Final Wars, when they got the idea to use Godzilla, the American Godzilla in that. I think he's the one that pitched the idea. And because Sony had, or Toho had the thing where they own the character and rights, they were allowed to use it because enough time had passed from Sony's stuff, and Sony's rights had lapsed also at that point too. So it was, they lapsed 5 years after the movie came out, so it'd be 2003. So as they're making Final Words in 2004, they decided to include the American Godzilla, which they obviously can't now call Godzilla because, you know, he's gonna be facing Godzilla,
right?
And I believe he took the line, you know. The Americans took the god out of Godzilla, so this was just Zilla. So they it has become a kind of a weird thing where when they license the character for new stuff like the IDW comics, that character is Zilla. But they also have the long-term contract with Sony, which still holds because Sony paid a ton of money for the Godzilla rights. And their movie is called Godzilla, and the character in the movie is called Godzilla forever. That's just the way it is. Toho acknowledges that and basically sees Zilla as a spin-off from the 98 Godzilla. The same way you have, you know, King Ghidorah and Mecha King Ghidorah and Kaiser Ghidorah, right, and, you know, the Monsterverse King Ghidorah. They're all King Ghidorah, but they're all variants that they can be licensed separately. For one thing, they all have their own copyright and trademark. So the American Godzilla, the 98 one, still is Godzilla, copyrighted by Toho. In the years since Final Wars, matter of fact, fairly recently, they were licensing Godzilla the 98 for products in Japan. You can get little like Christmas ornaments and things like that. They're say Godzilla and have the 98 says, you know, Godzilla 98 copyright Toho and everything. They also have done in Japan where they remastered the entire film series and released them, you know, done them on streaming services and also on Blu-ray. And again, they consider the 98 film and the Monsterverse films, they're all Godzilla. And they're considered part of the Godzilla series. And the copyrights say Godzilla on them. So, you know, it mainly comes down that I think there's fans who just dislike that version so much they can't accept it. and they just call it Zilla. But if you want to be official and correct by what Toho and the licensing is, the 98 version's Godzilla. It's, the cartoon series will never be called Zilla the series. It's always going to be Godzilla the series. That's the copyright. The thing too is like, I did it for Sci-Fi Japan. I did that massive article that took me many, many years to put together about the unmade 94 Godzilla that Sony was going to do with Jan de Bont. And I'd always been interested in that just because I'd seen something here, something there. We'd all seen the little pics of like some of the maquettes and things like that. But when I was working on a Godzilla film festival in with the American Cinematheque in Hollywood for the 50th anniversary. They brought over Japanese guests like Masaki Tezuka and stuff like that to come over and sign autographs and do Q&As and that kind of stuff. But one of the things the Cinematheque did is they lined up, which was really cool because I got to go to all of them. Visits to the effects studios all through Hollywood. And so we did like K&B and a lot of the places. But one of the places we went to was Stan Winston Studios. Uh-oh. And while we were there, they had like a conference room, which is completely surrounded by models and maquettes from Terminator and Aliens and Jurassic Park. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden I'm like, that's the Griffin. And it was the Griffin monster from Godzilla 94. They had a prop hanging up from the ceiling, and I asked them and they confirmed. And then I said, do you know Godzilla? Because we're here with a bunch of Godzilla people. And then when they wheeled it out of storage, so I got to be like face to face with this.
Oh, that's awesome.
The kid's like 2.5 feet tall.
Cool.
And so I got to go, and I was there, with Yasuki Inoue, who worked on the original Godzilla, and and so they were looking at it, they were making comments about like, we like this, we would have changed that, whatever. But we got to see those things, and because of seeing those two things up close, I'm like, I need to research the history of this thing. And I thought it'd be like, a typical article. You can write it and have it out in a month or a couple of weeks or whatever. And then I would talk to somebody and they would go, oh, you need to talk to this person too. They have some great stories and they have photos. So I'd have to track that person down. And then they go, have you talked to these 5 people? And it was like that kind of thing.
Endless game of
telephone. And then somebody would go, oh, I have all this great stuff, but I have to go dig it out for you. And it's like, so then the thing would be on hold for 6 months because, and then, so that article took like almost like 10 years to fully research and write. But I wasn't doing it obviously full time. It'd be like I'd come back to it after a year and work on something. But I found out Sony had a treasure trove of models and all kinds of stuff. And I asked if I could go in and like check the stuff out of this, and they said, we don't want to have Toho come down on us, so no. And I'm like, well, I'm friends with Toho. And they were like, well, what I lucked out onto is somebody put me in touch with Jan de Bont, and he had a bunch of stuff in his garage. He had photos of all the models, and he was willing to talk about the experience. So that was the big thing that allowed me to finally do the article. Was Jan, and then all the guys from Winston Studio were all willing to talk about it. They share a lot of stuff. So as I'm doing that, it kind of naturally led into, well, what happened after this project fell apart? And I ended up talking to a screenwriter whose job was to revise the Jan de Bont script and see if they could do something with it. And then that fell apart. And then obviously I already knew Patrick and a lot of people who had worked on the final version, and had learned a lot from my time at, working on the animated show. So I kind of knew all the stuff about, where the project went, why the character, people were trying to call it Zilla. So I just tried to throw all that stuff into the article. So yeah, when you talk about big information dump, yeah, it's like, here's what the people at Sony say. Here's what the people at Toho say. Here's what the copyright shows. Here's the information from the original contract that shows that this is Godzilla. All the versions of Batman. You think about to go like, oh, they're all Batman except for this one.
Yeah,
this one particular one. I don't like it. It's kind of the So it's just it's like you said. I take it as it's a Godzilla variant. It's like a little farther off than most of the other versions, obviously. But you have that now. You have Zilla, who you can have come in, and it'd be fun to see that character show up again in a movie. And see what they can do with it now that they're doing more CG in the films and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it would have to be a Toho film. So I mean, it would just be kind of
Yeah.
even if they did like a Monster Island type thing, you just see Zilla walk by in the background. You know,
Exactly.
kind of a fun.
I mean, at this point,
So,
they could probably
I just like
have
the idea
him.
of the idea of Godzilla fighting Godzilla on the 50th anniversary. I thought was just a really clever move. You know, and
I feel like at this
I don't know
point
if
they
you
could
guys
probably
know,
have
but
him show up in Godziban, and it would make perfect
oh
sense.
yeah, that would be a perfect example. But you know, the version they used in Final Words, I don't know if you know, but it was actually they just scanned one of the giant Treadmasters Godzilla.
Right.
I forgot about
the
that.
ultimate Godzilla.
Yeah, and then and I heard that from Shinichi Wakasa told me. It's like that's what we had. And then Tatopoulos told me legally he could not have given them the assets because of a whole contractual thing.
Right.
He goes, but if I had known, I would have given him the assets. And so Wakasa actually, we took him to Tatopoulos' studio, and he kind of sheepishly brought up that they were using his Godzilla in Final Words and they were killing it. You know? And Tatopoulos thought it was he was a little like I hope you're okay with us. And Tatopoulos thought that was awesome. He's like, you mean mine's gonna fight the original? And he's like, and he's gonna die?
He's gonna die.
Yeah, there's they had an interview with him, like some other guy, like I guess like a little magazine thing. They interviewed him after the Final Wars premiere up in California, and they asked him. He said, "So what was it like seeing your Godzilla fight the original?" And he just says, "That was the greatest thing I've ever seen." That's what he said.
You don't think that's gonna happen. It's kind of almost like the last Spider-Man movie where you're like, I never thought I was gonna see Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really weird, but it's fun, It's so it's like Godzilla '98 is part of that Godzilla multiverse. He's and it's like I'm fine with that, and it's like I said, I probably have a soft spot because I got to work on that for a year, the animated show. It was cool that before that I had done the comics, so I got to draw the traditional Godzilla first,
Well,
and then do the kind of the more modern design, and then go back. In more recent stuff, I've worked on a lot of the the Blu-rays and whatnot, so it's back to classic Godzilla.
Well, not to make you feel old, but this year is the 25th anniversary of Godzilla in 1998, and whether you realize it or not, like you basically helped construct like an entire generation of Godzilla fans. Like the kids that were growing up with that series are, they're some of them are married now. Some of them have kids now.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like so, and people, I'd like to think people like very much fondly remember the series, even if the movie not so much. So I don't know, to have a hand in that, I don't know, must feel pretty nice, or at least from my perspective.
It does. It's I would have been happy working on the show if they'd stuck really faithful to all the movie stuff. But the fact that the producers said, like, we need to have the fire and the radiation breath, we need to have the glowing fins, he needs to be tougher, more aggressive, making Nick a little more adventurous as opposed to, kind of the bumbling scientist type. And, these kind of little things. And doing things like, they're clearly doing, Destroy Monsters with, that one Monster Wars trilogy, and they set up a Monster Island, and he's fighting other monsters. Those kind of things I really got a kick out of. Once in a while, I would try to get him to do kind of something a little Toho-ish thing, and they thought I was nuts. It'd be just, there was one where something happens, and then they cut to Godzilla asleep, and they cut to a clip of his eye. I was actually seeing a storyboarded, and his eye snaps open, and I was like, can we do the sound effect from Godzilla versus the Sea Monster? I don't know if you remember when Godzilla.
I knew exactly where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were like, "What?"
So out of curiosity, because you mentioned you were trying to do a bunch of like Toho stuff, I seem to remember with the Dark Horse comics, there was concept art for other monsters that were like kind of a bargain bin version of like Ghidorah and Mothra and Anguirus. Was that ever talked about for the series at all? So something along those lines.
There was a few monsters they could not use. Like I think Mothra was tied up in some kind of contractual type thing. There was the plan, or there was an idea at one point to use other Toho monsters, the whole thing was Toho, I guess, from what I understand from the producers, was really good about approving stuff, which for whatever reason they were really easy to deal with. So you would send them the script, you would send them the character designs, that kind of thing, and you had to get their approvals before you could move forward. The one concern they had is they thought about doing something like Ghidorah or something, but they said to write a script for Ghidorah, design a new version, have it go to Japan, and then have it go through that process would just take too long when you're really on the gun to get these shows made, so I think they abandoned that idea pretty early, but then they did try to do things like, there's obviously the Mega Centipede, giant cicada episode, which is clearly a nod to Mothra. There's the Quetzalcoatl, and we got Cyber Godzilla. We were able to do like that version of Mecha Godzilla.
Yeah, that's probably the closest one.
Yeah, and I heard later on from Toho people, they loved the idea of a Mecha Godzilla made from the remains of a dead Godzilla. They thought that was really clever.
He's probably the coolest monster in the series just for that.
And hey, then Godzilla against Mechagodzilla came out.
Oh yeah, and he was basically Kira before Kira.
Exactly. I think that might have had somewhere down the line, and Toho had the rights of the show in Japan, so they would aired it on services over, I think, like DirecTV Japan or someplace aired it. And so that was kind of thing. I know Toho's obviously changed their licensing quite a bit. So like IDW was able to use all the characters, but it was like it would have been like one thing at a time, I think, with Sony, and just probably way too slow a process.
Yeah,
because you work hard and you work fast when you're doing Saturday morning cartoons. It's like it's not to the point where you feel like you're like the work's suffering, but it's a pretty quick pace, and they're working on they've got multiple directors, multiple crews working at the same time on different episodes. And then as things are being revised, you get changes. So like I'd be working on, say, episode 17, and somebody would go, "Hey, we need a last minute fix on episode 12. Can you spare half an hour to like draw out the sequence?" And it'd be like, you might even be some of his minors, this person's in the wrong clothes. You need to redraw their outfit on every shot, stuff like that. They're holding the wrong gun. They're, whatever. This guy's not supposed to be in the shot because he's got killed off earlier. Just take him out. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So, you would work on your own main episode, but you get called away a lot to, work a bit here, a bit there, on other stuff. So a lot of bouncing around, a lot of fast-paced stuff. I can tell you the very first episode got finished the morning it aired.
Wow.
Whoa, what? Wow. New family?
Talk about down to the wire.
Yeah, they had a problem there was a computer program that did the rain effects, and apparently it didn't work. And for the whole opening, when Godzilla's chasing them on the bridge in the storm, and then when Nick goes out and he's trying to find the egg, and it's still raining because it's just like the movie. So I got to see a cut like 2 weeks before it aired without the rain effects. Everything else was done, and it looked really good. And so later on, like I think the day before it aired, like that Friday, I said to Audu Payton, the producer, "So are you excited about the show airing tomorrow?" And he goes, "Right now I'm more focused on getting it finished." I was like, wait a minute, what? They got it. They got the program to finally work, and they were able to insert the rain effects. And they went out and got beamed out like it was like 3 a.m. before
oh my god,
it aired.
Oh my god.
And, so I mean, that's the kind of stuff you plan and you plan and you plan, and then something goes wrong at the last second. He said it, but it was I had a really great time doing it. It was a really good crew of people. Spent a lot of time obviously with the other storyboard artists, with the directors, the producers, the art crew that did the production designs. They were in the same building, but they were like there was almost like a wall separating us, kind of a thing where you would go around this wall and there'd be their section, and they're all really good guys, but I didn't get to know them as well. So I mentioned you guys should talk to like Phil Barlow, since he's the head designer on the show, and Phil's like a guy where we do small talk and chat and say hey, and hey, I like this design, or go back because they had to have something revised and ask him to change something, that kind of thing. But I didn't get to know him as well as a lot of the other people on the crew. So if you get a chance to interview him, I imagine he'll have a lot of interesting stuff to say that has nothing to do with what I was doing, because he was the one that had to deal with like creating designs because they weren't allowed to show Godzilla yet, that kind of stuff.
Right. Like the Gorgon, which we'll get into momentarily.
The Gorgon design. Obviously you've seen the Sci-Fi Japan article. We've got some of that production art where it's kind of in the shape of Godzilla, but it's not anywhere near the final design because they didn't want, that movie was so clear about leaks,
right,
that are so strong that Sony was really careful about even the artwork for the cartoon getting out because it could spoil stuff for the movie.
Yeah, and that's why the show was called The Heat Seekers in production.
Yeah,
the Heat Seekers.
Heat Seekers logos and artwork were up. They were still around the office when I was working on stuff. They created like a fake team of superheroes called the Heat Seekers, so that if anyone came in looking at that's the artwork that was on the walls. It was a really interesting, amount of secrecy. I've worked on a few projects, but that one had the most intense secrecy early on.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of Blue Harvest, the original Star Wars production name, And it kind of sounds legit, like it kind of sounds like a real movie, Blue Harvest, Heat Seekers, but it's like also to the average person, kind of boring as shit.
That was the one, right? The Terror in the Forest or something.
Yeah, like like it would have totally had me fooled.
I'm surprised no one's made a movie about that yet. Yeah.
Blue Harvest, like actual Blue Harvest movie. That would be pretty dope.
Yeah.
Oh
It's
man.
floating out there. It's got recognition. Use it. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So
going back to the Toho monster, something I wanted to ask real quick was, so I noticed like in some of the earlier episodes, like some other ones kind of sneaked in here. So I was wondering, like when you were working on like the Nano Beast episode or the What Dreams May Come with the Crackler, did anybody ever kind of notice like the Nano Beast was Hedorah, or the guy that's in the coma who dreams up the monster, it's made electricity, is Gabara? Like,
Yeah, I mean, those are clearly influences, and there was stuff like, obviously there's like a Mechanicon episode,
Right.
there's, set in Japan. So yeah, I mean, that was the thing. It's like even when you couldn't officially do something because a lot of these people are fans working on the show, you're like, let's get some Toho-ish monsters in there, and then he'd even do the lines like, I know at one point, Nick brings up Destroy All Monsters, I know that philosophy, and there's the line that the episode with the giant robot Yeti about, what is, Godzilla doesn't come to Japan, that was like a line or something to that, somebody goes, I saw Godzilla, and somebody else goes, no, you didn't, Godzilla's not in Japan. It's like that kind of stuff. You do those little like, zips and stuff like that. And, try to throw stuff in the background from time to time, Did you guys see Godzilla Singular Point?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually did want to ask you about that.
Did you see the little the plush figures at one scene? They're like, there's toys of different creatures.
Yeah,
I've seen the Rodan. I don't remember what company, but they made a physical Rodan plush, and I have one. It's adorable, and I love it.
Oh wow! I gotta look into that now.
So David, I think this is news to you.
They had Godzilla '98, and I want to say they had
that's right,
Godzilla series version.
I do remember that. Yeah,
I was like, that's a nice acknowledgement from the Toho side.
It looks like they had Kamothrax too, Gazuki, and I think the turtle.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Which is like,
so
wow, such an unexpected
really
homage.
As we're working on the show, I would say, Toho let us know early on they were very happy with the show. They liked the changes, and they saw where it was going and everything, and they were really supportive. And that led to me, because Toho had offices in LA. I later on got to meet some of the Toho people, and we became friends with like the various general managers they had over there, and that's kind of like helped me get other work from them over time, But it was nice the first time I met them to go, I worked on like Godzilla series. I did Godzilla versus Charles Barkley, and they're like, oh, we love all that stuff, It's like, so it was nice to be on their side, have them on your side, and know that they liked it. And then like I said, it's really nice the fan base turned out for the show, and we're really positive about it because again, I understand the the mixed feelings about the '98 Godzilla, the design, the whole thing around it, and everything. But as a Godzilla fan working on the show, I'm going, I hope other Godzilla fans like this. We're trying, we're working with what we've got, and we're trying to make something that's fun. And even if it's not the Godzilla you prefer, the show has that kind of Toho feel to it, and everything like that. So yeah, it was nice. The response right away was really positive. And then, like you said, kids are now, they watch it, are now adults, with jobs and marriages and, kids and all that of their own. And the fact that, the reaction to the show is still so positive, is really nice, I mean, anything I work on, you always have people are going to enjoy it, and when you're working on something that's close to your own heart, again, you really hope people are going to enjoy it. So it feels good, knowing that, 25 years later, people still like the show, or make jokes about the Barkley comic, whatever the may be,
Yeah, and I think with that, we can actually start getting into a deep dive of the show that I wanted to do. So I did want to briefly mention the
time,
cast.
So whatever you guys need to talk about, let's do it.
I'll do a lightning round for the cast. Forgive me if I get some of this data wrong or butcher some of the pronunciations, but I'll just do this real quick.
Fine. Remember, I worked on the show 25 years ago, so it's not all super too.
So, of course, your buddy Tom Kenny did the voice of Nigel, and he is known for, Rocko's Modern Life, and I think some show called Sponge Boy or
Mr. Show,
something.
SpongeBob.
Yeah.
Chris, you
Something
already
like
used
that.
that joke of not knowing what SpongeBob is. You can't reuse it.
You're right.
Used it already.
Okay.
That's what editing's for, right?
Ian Ziering, I believe is his name, did the voice of Nick.
Yeah.
He also, I believe, played Batman in Batman Beyond. Is that correct?
Oh, Terry McGinnis, you mean?
Oh, maybe I messed that up.
I mean, Terry is Batman in Batman Beyond. He's Batman Beyond.
Take my word for it. I'm revisioning history. It was Ian. He was also in Spider-Man 2003, I believe, the cartoon.
Was that the 3D one on MTV?
So.
Oh God.
Let's see.
Ian's obviously really known for Beverly Hills 90210.
Right.
He was one of the stars of that show, and then he did all the Sharknado movies. So, which has a weird cult following. He's mainly, he's kind of one of those guys. Like he's mainly an on-screen actor, but he does quite a bit of voiceover work too. And I think he actually got the part because I'm playing his name, the other guy from 90210, Jason, who ended up playing the villain in a couple episodes of the Godzilla series, was originally cast to be the lead, and then he couldn't fit it into his schedule, so Ian took it over. So it's probably like they knew each other from 90210. He's probably going, "You should do this. I don't have time. You should do this." So that's how Ian ended up being Nick.
Wow. Yeah, and I think he no hate to Matthew Broderick, but he definitely plays a more, I want to say, confident and more like actionable.
It's very similar to comparing Anakin Skywalker in the prequel trilogy to Star Wars: The Clone Wars. They're like entirely different characters, and
yeah.
So I believe Bridget Bako did the voice of Monique, and she was in Disney's Gargoyles.
She was an actress, very pretty. She did still around as far as I know, but she was one of those ones that did a lot of I don't know how best to describe it, adult fare, but not pornography. More things like there was a show called Red Shoe Diaries that David Duchovny was the lead on before he did X-Files. That was basically about and it was a character who would read these like erotic stories basically, and she was his love interest in the pilot who kills herself and kind of spurs the series on and stuff. But she would do like those kind of things. So like erotic Cinemax type shows back when Cinemax was doing more of that kind of stuff. I think they did a few movies, but I think, like I said, mainly kind of switched over to voice work. So, they're all like, I think for the most part, almost everybody worked in the show were pretty well established doing on-screen acting as well as doing voice work. So who's next on the list?
Oh, Reno Romano did the voice of Randy Hernandez, known for. Oh, okay, maybe I got him confused with. Did Reno voice
Yeah, he
the
was
Batman?
He voiced
Okay,
Batman. He was Batman
That's-
in the Batman.
Okay,
But Ian
there we
Ziering
go.
was in like one episode of Batman Beyond.
Okay.
So you were like halfway there.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. He was also in Extreme Ghostbusters.
He also played Spider-Man in the PlayStation 1 Spider-Man games.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
What? I thought Toby
I
did.
thought he was Spider-Man at one point. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro on the PlayStation.
Oh,
on the
okay. I thought you were
original
talking about
PlayStation.
I thought you were talking about the movie.
No.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure that was Toby. Charity James, voice of Elsie Chapman, known for The Simpsons and Space Jam, which is like the most '90s combination of titles I've ever heard.
Exactly. I met her once. It was funny. She was actually a friend of mine. And so I was at my friend had a party, and she goes, "Oh, yeah, you should talk to Charity. She's right over there." So we ended up having a nice chat about the show. She was very, very pleasant. But it was like the only time I ever saw her. I never saw her at the office or any of that stuff.
Right.
They would record obviously at a recording studio in Burbank, I think it was.
Mm.
So you wouldn't see the voice actors generally. Like I said, I didn't get to know Tom until a few years after the show, just by bumping into him at events and things, knowing who he was from, Mr. Show and things like that. So, so I met a few of the hand voice cast,
And then, speaking of cast that you've met, of course, Malcolm Danare returns from the movie as Dr. Mendel Craven. And Kevin Dune returns as Major Hicks, and I think
I want to say though. Well, actually, I believe, I can't remember his name, but the mayor I think reprises his role
right.
as well.
I meant to write that down.
Michael
and I
Lerner
clearly didn't.
as Mayor
Michael
Ebert.
Lerner, yeah.
So
There was a plan, I think, early on to make him much more of like a foil. Like he was always causing trouble for the heat seeker team, whatever. But at some point they decided that, I think they said no one cares about the mayor. Basically went the right side. So you'll notice he's in the first couple early episodes, like the nanotech, and then they just kind of phased him out, But it was great that they got Michael Lerner to come back, and again, another well-established actor.
Yeah, for sure.
And, once again, blanking on the name, but in the '98 movie, the guy that played the kind of bumbling military officer, who he was the one like we need more guns. And
Sergeant O'Neill.
yeah, the guy that played Sergeant
Doug Savant
came in for one episode playing a different character.
Oh, really?
Like later. Yeah, I think he might be in the Area 51 episode playing a military guy. But it's a
Trespasser number
military
2.
guy. There you go.
Yeah. But fun fact about that actor, he also did the audiobook for Godzilla '98, the novelization.
Oh.
Really?
Oh, there you go.
Interesting.
I did not know
I don't
that.
have the audiobook. I have the novel. So
Yeah, I have. I think they made 2 of them. I think they made a junior novelization, which I have, but I want to say there's also like a regular one. But
I'm sure there's like a full.
Yeah.
yeah, there's a regular novel. I have the regular one.
Yeah.
Interesting. They do after the movie. They tell you what happens after.
Mhm.
Oh.
A little bit about like affecting Godzilla and doing things like that, which don't really connect well with the series. But it was its own thing.
I mean,
So
were they
if you
planning
are a
on?
fan, you should.
Weren't they planning on kind of retconning the series anyway? Because they were planning like a whole movie.
Yeah, they had that sequel that picks up this just like the pilot of the series. It does the same exact thing where it's Nick finding that egg.
Yeah. And so I don't know how I guess they just wouldn't have fit completely, obviously, if they'd gotten that movie off the ground,
Right.
But it's just one of those things where obviously the story about just since the film didn't perform the way they wanted it to, Sony really wanted to cut the budget for the second one. And I know Devlin and Emmerich were like, we can't work with that budget, It's just to do a big scale movie. so it just fell apart, So the series basically became the official sequel. I guess is just, 'cause there was nothing else. I guess.
Now,
So,
there is one other voice actor that I feel like we should mention. The great Frank Welker provided vocal effects for Godzilla himself.
Really?
Yes.
I thought that
Yes.
in the series.
In the series.
Yes, in the series.
I didn't know that.
As well as the
probably
chameleon.
specific things they needed, like reaction sounds and things like that. So it's like I don't know. Whatever he did, it must have been pretty like early on. They probably had him
Mhm.
record a bunch of stuff. Just because I know they were using like modified versions of the roar from the movie for the most part. You need more, grunts and reactions, and if Godzilla gets surprised or angry, those kinds of things. You need very specific sounds. So that would make sense to bring in somebody like Frank Welker because he can do that stuff.
We're almost done with the cast
Sleep.
list. We also
What else we got?
Paget Brewster, voice of Audrey Timmons. Joe. Oh shit! I'm gonna fuck this up. Joe.
Oh yeah, his name's Killer.
Joe Pantoliano.
Pantoliano, I think.
Pantoliano.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, Joe, yeah, Joe's
Giuliano.
Yeah. Voice of
Joe's a
Anima.
guy. If you know him, he works. That guy, he's, you go back a ways. I don't know if you've ever seen Risky Business. He's Guido the Killer Pimp.
Yeah,
He's hunting down Tom Cruise.
Which I feel like fits
He was
the voice of Animal very well.
Yeah. He's the bad guy in the first Matrix, the one
Oh.
that turns on them all and tries to kill them while
he's
they're still.
Cypher.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's Cypher. He is one of the main mobsters in a few seasons of Sopranos. He's just the guy, like, his resume is full of so many incredible, like, highly regarded films. And he's, if you've never seen Memento, he's kind of the guy who's helping them, Guy Pearce, trying to figure out what happened in, his past. So, I mean, he's a guy, like I said, that guy works. So he doesn't tend to do a lot of voice work as far as I know. I think he's a regular working actor, on-screen guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has like a half dozen animation credits, but it's like he's mainly an on-screen guy. So, and it's cool to get somebody like that for a cartoon show.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think I also have written down that you worked on the Goonies. Is that correct?
Yeah, he was one of the two bad guys hunting down. If you've seen the Goonies, there's like the evil mom, and then her two bumbling sons who are all like criminals that are hunting down the Goonies. Yeah, so, I mean,
I'm surprised someone with that much range even had time to do the entire series.
I mean, he was only in like
Yeah,
a
I guess
handful of episodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. They could probably bring him in for like 6 episodes. I never got to go to a recording session for Godzilla, but I did ask if I could go to one for Big Guy, and they let me do that. The Big Guy racing that had, some notable like names again, but it was just fun to watch how the process goes. And they were having like an actor say no every way you could possibly think of, so they could pick the one. So they said, "You just do what." She was going, no, no, no. No, like doing that for like 4 minutes, that kind of thing, and it's like, wow, okay. On top of just doing lines, and then they would also do the thing like, oh, we need to we changed the line from an episode we recorded like a month ago, so can so and so say this, and they would just step forward into the mic and say like one line out of context or whatever, and so it's an interesting process. I'm glad I got to see that. I wish I could have gone for Godzilla, but I was the newbie, coming in like as the show's already in production. So I basically stayed at the office in True Godzilla. That was kind of my main job,
And our last name that's on my list is Keith Sarabaka. Sure, is that how you pronounce the last name?
I believe so. It's a
Cool.
nice mix. I'm not sure what he's done lately, but he was another one of those like guys that would show up in a bunch of different TV shows.
Yeah, I have him written down
like-
for X-Files. He voices Felipe Roach in this show, who, of course, in the movie was played by...
Jean Reno.
Yeah, I don't know why that name escaped me for a minute.
Jean Reno.
And I also saw that you guys drew him in the the costume for Leon the Professional.
Oh yeah, that was like Phil Barlow's career. They did it as the Professional. The one picture, yeah, that's great.
Very cool.
I have that. I have it in my files. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
there
that
was
one
a
made me
cool
giggle.
thing. I'll say a cool thing about the show too is they attracted a lot of known actors for guest spots. And so you had guys like Clancy Brown, who's done now a lot of voice work, and Ron Perlman, Linda Blair, came in and did one, and
yes, I see Michael Chiklis on here.
Yeah, Chiklis. There was the mom from George Costanza's mom from Seinfeld did. I think she's in the Crackler episode. Robert Forster, obviously from Breaking Bad and Jackie Brown and a lot of 70s stuff, was Elsie's mom in an episode. And then we had Roddy McDowell, who's from the Planet of the Apes and Fright Night.
That's incredible.
And apparently that was his last acting job because he was he was
Really
old and sick. Yeah, he came in and he did the voice for a professor in the Loch Ness Monster episode, and then passed away.
That was him
later.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it was like you get all these great obviously voice actors, but then you're also getting a lot of names, and it's like going through and going like, wow, we actually got so and so to come in to do an episode of Godzilla.
I was so shocked that Tom Kenny was in the show, and this aired a year before SpongeBob, so I'm sure his life flipped right upside down shortly after this too.
Oh yeah. I mean, SpongeBob just took off, and I'm sure again he probably was a little bit like me that he was a Godzilla fan and the chance to come out to work on it, and so.
Yeah, I didn't know SpongeBob was a Godzilla fan.
Now we got to get Tom Kenny on the next episode
now we got.
of the show.
Oh, I'm sure he's probably. I'm sure he has agents and shit you have to jump hoops through.
Probably.
I mean, dude, it's Tom. Dude, Tom Kenny. They probably send him home in a bulletproof van after every recording because that's Nickelodeon's
jam. Their golden goose.
He just to let you know, he is really really nice. He's incredibly funny and he's quick on his feet. And we went to. It was one of the things where I bumped into him at when in LA, they would do a lot of those, classic film screenings and whatnot. And I think I bumped into him at a screening of a Godzilla film, or it might have been the original Mothra. And we ended up as a big group going out to a dinner. And we're in this restaurant, and one of the people there goes, my niece loves SpongeBob. You talk to her. And he's like, sure. They put him on the phone to this little girl, and he's doing the voice. And one of his responses was, really? Well, your face is on my lunchbox too. And I was like, what a great thing to say to a 6-year-old girl or something. And I was just like, that's awesome. And the fact you can make people happy that way, I think is just fantastic.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, when it was over, I'm like, good one.
Oh my God.
So it's if you get a chance to get him on board an interview with him, you guys are gonna have a blast.
Oh yeah, I'll
We'll
shoot
do
him
our
an
best,
email, but to be honest with you, I think he's probably.
Fingers crossed.
I know he's a busy guy. You see how much SpongeBob stuff they pump out?
Yeah.
He's probably a busy guy. But I think Nick was gonna say something too. I kind of cut him off next.
Yeah, I was gonna say something. I said when you think about it, I mean, SpongeBob is a Godzilla fan because he lives in Godzilla's home, Bikini Bottom.
Oh,
true.
Have you ever
the hydrogen test site?
Yeah, Keith, have you ever heard that SpongeBob theory that all the fish in the Bikini Bottom are mutated from the Bikini Atoll bombings?
That's great. I mean, I love the cartoons where they really are good for kids or fun for kids, but have a little twist to them where as you're older, you're like, hey, wait a minute. What?
I think that's what I think this generation's version of SpongeBob right now is, mark my words, it's Bluey. I've met so many adults that like Bluey.
Yeah.
Bluey's kind of good. I've watched a couple episodes with my niece and it's like, oh my God. And
yeah, when you can catch those, they're hysterical. I remember, Ren and Stimpy when it first came out. It was just like, what the hell is this? and SpongeBob kind of had that similar. I mean, not Ren and Stimpy was insanely violent, which I thought was hilarious. You could get away with that on, a network cartoon or whatever in the 90s. But, just the weird sensibilities of SpongeBob, I think you're just, it's so appealing. And, you can find so many little oddball things to like just enjoy yourself. And again, Clancy Brown, who did a voice on Godzilla, was like his boss, right? I think is that
yeah, he's Mr. Krabs.
So I mean, that guy's got one of the all-time great voices. Going back to Highlander and Shawshank Redemption and things like that. He's a great character actor, and get him on a show. I think that's fantastic.
So I did want to start talking about some select episodes.
That is fine.
I got
the window open for you guys today, so I know you're gonna have to obviously do some editing, but if
that's
you
all on me. I'll take
about
care of it.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a lot because I know we kind of went off on some weird tangents, but hopefully listeners will find it enjoyable.
Yeah. So I did want to ask you. I wanted to go around the table, the digital table that we have here, and ask everyone's favorite episode. Since obviously we do not have time to talk about all 40 episodes, so I did want to just pick out a select few. I did want to briefly mention the Monster Wars trilogy, just like, regardless of what our favorite episode is, just because if you really think about it, this is like a feature-length like Godzilla film that like no one even like considers. It's a it's a 3-part trilogy series that's based off basically a whole homage to Destroy All Monsters, like we talked about earlier. So I think for most people that's probably very much a standout. I don't want to say episode, but episodes. And of course, it ends off with the battle with Godzilla.
The first release, when Sony was putting out the random episode Blu-ray or DVDs. I think that's why it got the first release, where they put them all together. It just made sense. Yeah. So
So I guess we will start off with. I guess we'll end off with Keith of the favorite episodes.
Okay.
So, me personally, it's been a minute since I watched it. I was watching the series the other day. I watched all of New Family again. Awesome introduction to the series, by the way. Just seamlessly starts where the movie left off. But my favorite episode will have to be Scales, or Scales. It spells it as. So for those that don't remember Scales, I believe the kaiju in that episode is like this weird insect critter, and the whole episode takes place as security footage and like handheld cameras. I think it I think Animal records it, or Nigel. It's been a while since I watched it, and I love that episode. It's obviously it's radically different from every other episode in the series, and also it kind of felt like a precursor to Cloverfield. It's like the Godzilla version of Cloverfield.
That I can say real quick, that was the episode I think we premiered that at G-Fest 90, I want to say 98 or 99. It had to be because it was before it aired.
Right.
I helped set up a panel for Godzilla the series there, and we showed one episode, and it was that one because we figured it's a really fun episode, really distinct, and it hadn't aired, so that was beneficial too. And the audience really enjoyed it, and I do think it's one of the standouts because of the reason you said, the whole everything is a security camera, or Animal's point of view or Nigel's point of view, and it presents a really interesting take that makes it stand out for the rest of the show.
I mean,
plus it's a Monster Island episode, so it's kind of that's fun too.
And like I said, it may even been this. I think this was, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I think this was before like Blair Witch 2, and then like when Cloverfield blew up to like 2008, like this, like you guys kind of had something going. Like you had like a good idea going.
It was definitely released the same year as Blair Witch. I don't know if it was before or after.
Maybe 98 or 99. So,
I'm not trying to insist it influenced Blair Witch.
No, you never know.
But it was ahead of its time, or at least I think so.
I would say Blair Witch was probably well into production as we were doing that, but
right.
Most likely.
I do know that obviously the guys behind Cloverfield, were Godzilla fans.
Right.
So whether they watched the series or not, I don't know. But that was kind of like if you watch any of the bonus features on Cloverfield, they're all like, we wanted to do an American Godzilla.
Right.
That's like, we love Godzilla. We want to
Yeah.
do an American. So yeah, you never know. It's like, but it's it was a clever idea again. What they did with mixing the found footage with a monster attack, and I thought Cloverfield worked well because that whole on the ground from the point of view of just people trying to get the hell out of there.
Right.
Not with military and scientists and trying to figure out explanations. It was just a really fun take, and I was like, I really like that movie.
Yeah, and just hopping back on the Cloverfield thing too. Just I'll mention real quick. I believe the story goes J.J. Abrams was visiting Japan with his son. He saw the store. He saw the stores. Saw like all the Godzilla merch. I presumably probably like all the Bandais and stuff like that. And he was like, "Man, I wish, like America had its own like giant monster." Because before then, I think all they, we had like King Kong, which is like
really it.
King Kong's only arguably a kaiju, right? And then we have Godzilla 98, which isn't our own monster.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think he wanted to be like our, New York's, designated kaiju, which is kind of odd because he did opt to like barely have him in the movie when the movie had come out, but he had the right idea. Yeah, I mean,
it's like I said, that's the thing we kind of talked when I said about how I became a Japanese monster movie fan, is that I love monster movies in general, but the Beast of 20,000 Fathoms is one movie,
right.
Tarantula is one movie, and Them is one movie, so there's not like, with the exception of Kong, there's not really a giant monster franchise
right
in America, the way there is obviously multiple ones in Japan. And so, it, like I said, for me as a kid, it'd be fun. You see Frankenstein Conquers the World, and then you see the Straw Monsters. There's Baragon. He's in both.
Mm-hmm.
You start building this kind of, these movies connect. And you start recognizing the actors and all that kind of stuff. So I think that really added to like my love of the Japanese cinema. Obviously as it led on to me doing all this Godzilla stuff as an adult. So what was the next? Anybody else? What's the episodes stand out for you guys?
I guess I can go next. My favorite episode that got me hooked as a kid was What Dreams May Come. Now, that's the Crackler episode. Now, what hooked me from that was the bizarre monster that shows up at the beginning, because there's like a thundering outside this apartment, and then you finally see what this thing looks like, and it's got like 6 glowing eyes, and it doesn't roar, just got like a cackling laugh. It just goes like, like, that's its roar. It's just this weird laugh. I was like, what? and then it disappears after it attacks the apartments, and it's actually a really good mystery behind it, because they're trying to figure out like where this thing come from, and every time they think they got it, it disappears. Like, it attacks one place and then it just teleports somewhere else. So like, and they start to figure out like where it's coming from when they find out that the clues all link up to one guy who's gone missing. And it was a really good mystery. It was this Gary guy. So he used to work on the subway, and the Crackler attacked the subway. He had a nasty landlord, so the Crackler attacks the landlord apartment at the beginning of the episode, and then they finally figure out where he's at, which is he was in a hospital, and the scientists are using this like brainwave thing to snap him out of a coma, because he got into an accident on the job while working in the subway, and eventually they managed to like snap him out of it, but the machine took all of his dark impulses, like all of his unconscious grudges, and it created the Crackler, which acts on them. And the Crackler is like his darker id. It's like the little evil demon that like sits on your shoulder saying, "Oh yeah, you should totally punch that guy." That's the Crackler monster. And what was really cool was like even when they snap him out of it, like they finally pull the thing from him and they wake him up and stuff. When they remove the psychic link, the crackler has no more self-control of itself. So the first thing it does is, instead of it being very strategic, it just runs amok and starts attacking the military and stuff. Because earlier in the episode, when the military tries to like hunt it down, it doesn't attack them, it just disappears because he doesn't want to fight the military. So the crackler acts on it. When it's removed, it goes nuts and starts attacking the helicopters. It was a really cool monster because he's got like these 3 limbs he walks on. His fists turn to like electricity, and it can shoot like bolts of energy out of its fists. And the way that I love the way like they animate it, and then when it's pulled out from the psychic link, it doesn't have the cackle anymore. It's got this high-pitched scream. Like it just, all it does from the last half of the episode is it starts like screaming like crazy and making this like, it kind of sounds like a high-pitched like bird or a mongoose or something, or maybe it was like a cat. Like they edited the audio, but it sounds like an actual animal though. But what was neat was the way that they defeat it was really clever too. So Godzilla grabs a giant metal ball that's on some little piece of a building. It's next to the stadium, and he charges it up with his atomic breath and like flings it back at the crackler, and the crackler like disintegrates into like this like big ball of flesh, and then it just disappears. Like it kind of like almost explodes, but it detransitions, like it like disappeared again. And I thought that was so cool how they animated it, because it literally looks like he melts when the thing hits him, and then he just vanishes like a ghost. I thought that was so cool how the animators did that.
Yeah,
that is a really good episode. It's I don't know if you know, but that was written by Len Wein, who as a comic guy, I was like, I love the fact that Len created Wolverine and a lot of the new, who were called then the new X-Men, Colossus and Nightcrawler and Storm and those characters. And he created Swamp Thing.
Oh wow!
He wrote those with Bernie Wrights, and so I mean, he's like a really well established. He passed away a few years ago, which is sucks. But he was a very well established comic book creator. So when I would see his name, or Marv Wolfman wrote the one with the giant bees. And these are guys who I'd grown up reading their comics. I was like, and they know how to tell a story. And the thing is, I don't know how the process exactly worked, because they would, bring in these freelance writers like those guys, and they're writing for a show that hasn't aired and you don't know the characters yet and that kind of thing for those early episodes. That had to be incredibly difficult. And that's why they would have the story editors like Bob Scare and stuff. I imagine they would probably give them the series Bible and answer questions and steer them and then make changes as necessary. So, I don't know how much of the final product is Len's, but I mean, knowing his background as a comic book writer, you could just feel, he had the details down and he knew how to deliver an ending and all that kind of stuff, the mystery and that kind of stuff. So it's, I think you're right. I think it's a really great episode. And it's also the thing too, where they were really trying to figure out a lot of variety of opponents for Godzilla. So it wasn't just, another mutated animal or something, And the crackler really stands out because that is a very unique backstory and also design,
Do you know if the Gabra inspiration was deliberate?
I do not. Again, I would not be surprised. I also I've always wondered, because there's an episode of Ultraman, the original series,
right,
that has a wishing stone, a meteor. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the original Ultraman show.
Are you talking about the episode where it's the kids drawing, and then it turns into like this big?
There's one like that, no, but this one is a stone falls from space, and if you hold it and you think about what you want, it appears.
Right.
But it only appears as long as you're awake or you're focused on it. So the kids are making like race tracks for cars. But a guy steals it and he makes a monster because he just wants to destroy things. And of course, he makes the monster and he's inside a building. So the monster grows and destroys the building.
Of course.
And he's in a coma. And so they can't turn it off. It's kind of similar to the character in the Crackler episode where he's got he's like in a coma, he's got the device on his head.
Right.
And they can't get it to stop,
Oh, okay. So that sounds more similar.
So I always assumed that had an
Okay.
influence, but again, I don't know if the writers were watching Ultraman.
Wouldn't put it past them, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, they very well could have. Yeah, and now that you mentioned the Swamp Thing, looking back on its design, it does have kind of that style because he's got these really meaty looking like hands. Like he looks like something kind of came out of a swamp a little bit. The way his like design looks.
Yeah, I would assume that might be something to ask Phil about if he was aware that Len was going to be writing that episode and maybe tailoring it to what Len had done in the past. I would assume so, but I don't know. Again, that's something you like Phil could possibly answer for you if you can get a chance to talk to him.
For sure.
For sure.
As for my favorite episode, I really, really like An Early Frost for a number of reasons, actually. Namely, it's kind of very Toho-y. Like it opens up with, Godzilla, quote unquote, wreaking havoc, but it ends up being the chameleon, which that's a design that even as a kid and to this day still really, really, really unsettles me. Just the face,
it's a creepy looking.
It doesn't look right, and it's very uncomfortable to look at. That's why I love it. But it opens up with the chameleon attacking, and everyone thinks it's Godzilla, kind of like the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. And then we learn later on that the chameleon is actually grown from Godzilla cells, kind of like Godzilla versus Biollante in a way. And then, of course, you have Cameron Winter, who's such an entertaining villain to watch. He's only in like 3 episodes, but he's so fun anytime he's on screen. And I can't remember the actor who plays him, but
that was the one I was actually trying to remember earlier. It was Jason Priestley, who was on 90210 with Ian Ziering. And initially was going to be Nick, and then he couldn't do it, but he came back to play, Cameron Winter.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the two kind of guys who were, buddies on a TV show playing arch rivals on another TV show. He's a great character. I mean, it was just, 3 episodes or 4 episodes, whatever he's in, are all really entertaining. You're right. That one has got a nice, like, creepy start. Again, for a kid show, that kind of thing, dealing with all the restrictions you have to deal with when you're doing a Saturday morning show, and you got the standards of practices telling you can do this, but you can't do that. This is too traumatic for kids or whatever. So trying to find a way to tell a really good story with those limitations. And I think that one really does deliver,
And I think that leads us to what's Keith's favorite episode?
That scale episode might be it. I mean, I have like favorites. I don't know if I have a particular. I really enjoy the Monster War trilogy, and that one has a special place because I actually got to. I was one of the storyboard artists on the final fight between Godzilla and Cyber Godzilla.
Oh, very cool!
I got to do where Godzilla just rips Cyber Godzilla apart. I was like, that was a lot of fun to do.
So that's awesome because I actually remember the choreography for that scene being pretty dope. Like
the whole thing where crawls underground and then he blasts the breath up and hits Cyber Godzilla right in the face with it. And, that kind of stuff. That was a lot of fun. And then one of the ones I didn't originally work on the episode, but they had to make some minor tweaks. So I actually came in and did some adjustments on Cyber Godzilla's big reveal when they first comes out of the this was like an underground thing, right? They raise him up or something.
Yeah.
Smoke and or whatever, steam, and he comes out. I was like, so I got to work on basically his introduction and his death, which was kind of fun. And then there's just random ones. I really like the one that's kind of a take on the thing from another world, where there's a creature that keeps imitating everybody.
That's not Chameleon, is it? Or
is that kind of a nice creep?
Are you talking about Chameleon, the monster that mimics Godzilla?
No, I don't think so.
No, there's one. It's like midway through the series where there's a creature that's basically like almost like blobbish, and it just starts imitating the different members of Heat. And so they were doing things where like they would start to melt you as their faces melting, which is again getting away with stuff on a cartoon on a Saturday morning. And then it gets large enough for Godzilla has to take it on.
Trust no one. That's the episode.
Trust no one.
I kept getting Who Goes There, but that's actually the name of the
original short story. That's
the original short story.
And so, like, when they would kind of do something a little different like that, I thought was really fun. And the last episode when they have the big monsters fighting in the arena, because that's just big monsters fighting in an arena. It's like that's hard to get cooler than that. So, I mean, I could just do this all day, but the one with the Cameron Winter and the 3 hunters, where he sends them with the mech.
Oh, Lizard Season. That's a good one too.
Yeah. That one, the writer, I think it might have been Bob again. It takes place in his hometown. So he basically got hometown and had the monsters smash it, and that had some fun shots. I remember we did ones with like one of the guys inside the mech, and you're looking through his view screen, and Godzilla just gets closer and closer, and he's panicking, and then some missiles hit Godzilla from the side and knock him over, and it was like some fun stuff to animate. It was like, and then anything, sometimes Monique and Randy scenes were always fun to do, where he always had the crush on her, and she was just kind of begrudgingly letting him tag along while she did awesome spy stuff. Those are always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love her introduction scene. I think she sneaks into the house and like just starts kicking their ass, and like Randy's just like, I like her.
And the fact she's kind of there initially as a contingency in case Godzilla goes amok.
Yeah.
And then she ended up really kind of begrudgingly liking Godzilla, and her attitude changes over time. It was like, even though, like I said, there wasn't a super tight continuity, you could watch those characters like evolve over the course of the show, which was nice. I think she actually stands up to Philippe at one point.
She does.
Like, yeah. So it's like, it's a nice change from where they introduce her, and getting good voice acting and all that stuff, I think really helps, getting really good talented voice actors to come in and deliver all those parts. Right. So it was like, it's funny because I actually never worked on the scale episode, which I think is probably the best one. So you look at that one, you go like, oh, well, but I did get to do Monster Wars. I got to do a lot of, like I said, the one Lizard Season, and part of Trust No One. I got to do part of the episode where Godzilla's in Japan. So that was like, I thought that was a pretty big deal to do Godzilla in Japan,
Did you happen to work on my second favorite episode, which is I forgot what the title was. It's the one where he fights the Loch Ness Monster.
Deadlock.
Oh,
Deadlock.
yeah.
Deadlock.
I thought the idea for that was so goddamn funny. Like the idea of not only Nessie actually existing in this universe, but Godzilla fights it. So cool.
There's a really fun episode too with Randy and Craven, where they're looking after that creature. It's like a giant fungus. And
I remember the fungus one.
Yeah, and they end up kind of getting like stranded, so you see them turn like where they're suddenly like mountain men or lost in the woods guys, so they got like headbands and they're torn t-shirts. It was funny but it's only been like 2 days, so it's like it's very funny. A lot of stuff with those two was a lot of fun, like I said, it was just a fun experience. I had a lot of fun doing the one episode with the Shrewster, which is the one
Shrewster.
Because the whole gimmick for that was Devin and Emmerich said Godzilla could run whatever was 100 miles per hour or something, because of his long and thin legs. So they had a monster faster than Godzilla, and then Godzilla didn't know how to handle it. It was kind of a, fun working on something like that. Even though the monster itself was just a giant shrew, there wasn't anything too spectacular about the design or the creature itself. Just the gimmick of something fast, I thought worked really well, So
yeah, so cool. I think we're nearing the 2-hour mark. I think this is already our longest episode
for sure.
But
for sure.
There are just a couple David already dying inside watching me say this, but there are like a couple things I did want to mention. I did want to ask. So I'll start first. Before we, sign off, is there any particular story or memory you have? It has been 25 years, but is there any particular memory or story that we didn't know about that tell us about during your production of the show?
My favorite was the listening to Monique grunt, in the car.
That's a good one. Yeah.
and the way all the pieces fell into place. But
Oh my
there
God.
were just moments throughout the show. If you remember the episode where Godzilla fights the giant hummingbirds,
Oh.
and he has to wear the special goggles so he
Right.
can see them so fast. I remember walking into the director's office. There's a guy named Sam Liu who has now gone on and done a lot of stuff at Warner Brothers for their Batman films and things, the animated stuff. Walking into his office to talk about something, and on his desk was this picture of Godzilla's goggles. And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "That's stupid. That's what that is." But you watch the episode, it works. I remember they had a lot of problems with the episode where Godzilla gets infected by, I think the monster is called Bacillus.
Yeah, it's Bacillus.
And they have to go into his body. They were doing the whole Fantastic Voyage thing where they go into, and people were going, if you injected a person in Godzilla's veins, it would just clog his vein. He's not that big, you know. It was like a lot of that. The logic of the story just did not work, you know. But it's, again, you're like, we got to get it done, you know, that kind of. And so a lot of people, like, a lot of questions about that episode, and just about, you know, even though you're doing a Saturday morning cartoon show for it's the primary audience is children, you still want to have, you know, some care to the plot, some, you know, like I said, you found an episode like 108, you know, with the Crackler, where it's like, this really works for me. And here it is 25 years later, you're like, really enjoy that episode. You want the writing to be good. You want the, you know, the acting to be good. And that one was kind of like the problem episode where no one, you know, wanted to touch it.
Well,
you know?
originally, correct me if I'm wrong, Godzilla was originally supposed to have those goggles on, I think, like, all the time, maybe? I think that was supposed to be
they were going to have something to help like the humans interact with him. Was the initial design for him. That, like, they could almost use it to steer him, or they weren't going to be able to, like, remote control him, but more like, you know, guide, I think, is what. And then they decided it was just, you can't see the character's eyes. That's like a problem, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
You want to be able to see Godzilla react to things and stuff like that. So they had that design, and they just ended up using it for one episode, like, you know, midway through the series, you know, and, you know, the design's fine. It works for what it is. You know, it's, I don't know if anyone would consider the Hummingbird episode one of the classic episodes of Godzilla the series.
I was
But,
thinking
you know,
about 3D printing my own, like, set of goggles accessories for my, like, Zilla toys, but
there you go.
I think it would.
They have the model packs have really great turnarounds
Yeah.
for, like, all those props. So if there's ever something you guys just want a copy of, just let me know, and if I have it in my
sure.
files, I'll dump it.
Sure. Well,
I mean, it was things like, you know, we had to know what a walkie-talkie looked like from 7 angles, so we could draw it properly from scene to scene.
Yeah,
You know, trying to think. I mean, for the most part, working on the show went very smoothly. I mean, it was always pressure with deadlines, but, you know, that's just part of doing that kind of work.
right. That's life.
If there was never, like, you know, big blow-ups or something, you know, went horribly wrong, you know, it was always things like I said, like that program for the rain not being ready or not working properly, you know. I don't know if you know how the process worked, but we would get the script and the audio tape. You listen to that a few times while you're reading the script and you're kind of visualizing. Then you start drawing the storyboards, and then once they're approved by your director, they go and they basically would do animatics, where they would sync up the storyboards to the voice track, so they could figure out the running time for the episode, make sure it's in the time limits. And that, I always loved that process. So I'd always go back to, like, the animatics department and just kind of, like, ask them, like, you know, what scene I worked on, if you could do it this, match this to this, that kind of thing. But when you get to watch the rough cut of the show with the rest of the staff, we would do these, like, meetings in a conference room where they would play you see it coming together. It's really cool, you know, and you can start seeing where there needs to be corrections and tweaks, or, you know, that kind of stuff. But I just love that process. And then, you know, when we would get to screen a completed episode, when he comes back from overseas and everything, it was that I remember doing a lot of, you know, like, just sitting there watching, going, all right, that worked. Or, you know, that scene I did, it came out the way I wanted it to, you know, or that kind of thing. They had 3 animation studios that did work on Godzilla series,
Right.
and one was noticeably better than the others. And they would get like, they tended to give them the key stuff, like the Monster Wars stuff, and because they knew like they'll knock it out of the park. So you watch it once in a while, you'll see the animation's a little stiff, and another one you watch, it's moving really quick. Everything just moves right. That's
Yeah. So,
one of the benefits of having like a really good studio on board. So
yeah,
you would get mostly stuff like, a gun would switch hands between shots. You got to fix that, or they came in from the wrong direction, matching the other shot.
right.
If they're running left to right in the next shot, you want them coming in from the from the left. That kind of stuff. You have to watch those things. There was always challenges because you have human scale characters and then you got Godzilla,
Right.
so that's always a little difficult trying to fit that in the same frame. But again, I think they worked it out pretty well. So
So I did have.
We're just glad you guys
sorry.
enjoyed the show. So it makes,
course.
that helps.
Absolutely.
No, I used to watch this when I was a kid. Having the complete series DVD helped, especially. Doesn't feel that long ago, but I mean, I'm 23 now, and I probably watched this probably in middle school or something. So it's been a while.
Time flies, huh?
Yeah, unfortunately. I do have one more kind of long-winded question for you, if you don't mind.
All right, let's go for it.
Okay. So, back then, like, you finish one of these shows, you finish, like, Gargoyles finished, and I'm sure everyone on the team was probably like, we're never going to touch this ever again. Nowadays, though, in the modern day entertainment industry, people love nostalgia. They love bringing back shows that have no business being brought back. I think Gargoyles is getting another season. I think
it's getting a comic book follow-up. I don't know if it's getting a full series.
Okay. I know the Clone Wars, Star Wars The Clone Wars, I think it ended up pretty abruptly.
Now because of the whole Disney thing.
They finished it off with one more season, I think like last year or something. So, Godzilla the series, of course, ended pretty much on a cliffhanger. I think Godzilla like escapes like the big like Coliseum, and then like he kind of dips, just kind of leaves, and he's not gonna like breed or anything. I think they even said like in the first episode like he's not at risk of like laying any more eggs. So anyway, that's it. And as far as merchandise goes, we got those like weird Hardee's toys after the series ended. We got a few DVDs. Of course, we got this amazing complete animated series set that you helped work on. However, though, other than that, Toho has pretty much thrown a blind eye at Godzilla 98. There's a few merch every now and then. They release the X Plus Death Real Godzilla 98. Basically, the closest thing that happened to have for any like new news revolving this media property is YMSF kind of flirting with the idea of making some toys based off the series, but obviously that requires probably Toho's approval. I guess where I'm getting at is, do you see any sort of future for this series? Like, will we get another Blu-ray release? Will we? Do you think there's a chance maybe one day Toho will like maybe release a comic explaining the ending, or maybe like another like a Netflix cartoon or something like that? Like, do you see that happening? And even if you can't really necessarily answer that question, like, would you like to see that happen? Like, what do you think happened to Godzilla at the end of the series? What do you think happened to our titular heroes? Or did they?
I was going to say.
Did they just live, or did Godzilla just live a nice life on a farm? You know what I mean?
I think the way they designed the show, is, well, first of all, like Sony was in a different position than say Disney or somebody Nickelodeon, or where they didn't have their own network, or their own channel. Like Disney had obviously the Disney Channel, and now they have ABC, stuff. So Sony was in a position that when they were doing any of these shows, they had to pitch them to a network. And so Fox bought the show for 40 episodes, 2 seasons. It was pre-sold that way. And I think the intention was that the last episode is, it doesn't really end on like a cliffhanger or anything because they didn't want to do that. They knew there was going to be, that was the 40th episode, but they wanted to leave it so that if it went into syndication, you could just pick it up anywhere,
Right.
and follow it the same way you could say watching Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't have to know the whole history of Scooby-Doo to follow. So they left it open instead of having a clear ending. But the idea would be, I think that these characters would go on to have more adventures. You know, Godzilla got out of that place. He's out swimming in the ocean. He's around when Nick needs him, you know, that they would go on and do things like that. Because of obviously the, you know, the whole Sony deal has expired, you know, that would really impact trying to do anything new, like another series or any of that kind of stuff. The whole team too knew that, like I said, it was going to be 40 episodes. So it's like, we finished Godzilla, and then the team went on to, some of the people went on to Big Guy and Rusty. Some went on to the Starship Troopers Roughnecks CG series. That was, because it was always a Sony property, a movie that was being adapted into a cartoon. You know, some went on to, I think, another season of Men in Black. So we were all kind of, you know, spread out as soon as the show, our work on Godzilla was done. We were just on to the next thing. So there were, you know, unless the show had been like the biggest hit in the history of television, there wasn't really any plans to continue beyond 40. You know, like I said, there was that weird little bit of merchandising that kind of eked out. I don't think, you know, Toho aired the show in Japan. I know that. Like I said, I think it was on DirecTV Japan. Actually, some of the Toho guys are fans of the show and had asked me for like you know, character designs and things like that. So
that's cool.
You know, that was kind of nice. Actually, have Toho people like, you know, loving the stuff. You know, I don't think they've done any real merchandising or released it on like home video over there. You know, like I said earlier in the show, you know, I asked Mill Creek to look at the assets they got from Sony for the series and see if it's the quality for Blu-ray. And if it is, we'll probably end up doing a Blu-ray. And I'll throw a lot of my own personal, you know, hoard, I guess, of stuff that I kept from when I worked on it.
If they need a graphic designer for that Blu-ray cover, you know, put in the good word.
They have. You know, one thing is, I don't know if you've looked at the Middle Creek stuff, like the Ultraman stuff. They've got a great team. They might be somebody you should talk to just about learning from or whatever experience, because the Ultraman covers, I love them. It's just stuff they do for all.
I mean, you know, even this, like, I'm looking at the Godzilla Complete Series DVD. Like, this looks like pretty. Considering this is like nowadays like a fairly niche show, and they kind of just like spit this out with not much fanfare. This is like pretty clean cover. like they even bothered like changing the colors of the artwork to match the actual show, and instead of that like weird blue color scheme that they had on the other covers. It's like a really clean. You know, like I said, it's, you know, just, you know, I hope. Even if like the original like masters aren't good enough for Blu-ray, like shit, like we live in an age where we just upscale everything. It'll look good.
I mean, there's the possibility of that. We had that like on the Ultraman stuff. It's weird. The early shows were all shot on film, and so Tsuburaya was able to do really nice HD remasters, and 4K now and stuff for those early shows. And the more recent shows are all shot in high def.
Right.
So they're easy to put on Blu-ray. There's a chunk from about 1985 to about 2005 where they're all shot on video. And particularly the early 90s stuff looks like garbage. You know, I mean, it's really flat looking. And so Mill Creek decided to put those on DVD as opposed to Blu-ray because they didn't want to, you know. But a lot of the fans are saying we'd rather have these upscaled. So now Mill Creek's considering, you know, just seeing if we could do upscales. Yeah, and we've talked to Tsuburaya. Like, they're like, with these were shot on video, we don't have anything better. This is as good as it's gonna look.
Right.
You know, so
I mean,
so you know, you work with what you have, and I'd love to do a Blu-ray set for Godzilla series. I mean, just as a fan and also someone who worked on it, you know, and so I'll push. You know, and if it comes to upscales, maybe we could do that. As long as it, you know, you don't want to disappoint people where they buy the product and are like, yeah, this doesn't look like it should, you know, or something that picture quality's not to snuff or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've been keeping up with like the robot takeover recently, but AI is able to turn 30 FPS video into 60 FPS. It can, upscale entire footage. And I'm sure for like a cartoon, it would probably be a lot easier too. So,
Yeah, I mean, even if it's I think we have to wait a couple of years until the technology is fully there,
right.
or something. I don't know. So,
yeah,
like I said, it's something I want to see. So I'll keep pushing for it, see if I can get the bosses in Milk to agree to it. I don't know the sales figures for the original DVD set, but they told me they were very happy with the sales. So
Okay.
I don't, and that's the important thing. So it's
well, I'll buy as many copies as I need to for their sales number to look
that's
good.
it. I'll tell you, everybody. You almost buy 20 copies. No one will ever, Real quick, we did like at the American Cinematheque, which owns the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood. It's like a block down from the Chinese. We did like several Godzilla film festivals there, and we would. It was during the time when I was working on the classic media, was doing the classic Godzilla movies. Plus, they had the rights to the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, and so we were giving out DVDs as prizes. And once in a while, somebody would win a Godzilla Hanna-Barbera set or a disc, and you could tell they weren't overly excited.
Hey, disc 3 of that is like $300 on eBay. I don't know why.
Yeah,
the first two are super common.
But so yeah, they're not easy to find. I know that. But yeah, it would be funny. It's like, I did love the Hanna-Barbera show, but I enjoyed it, and I watched it as a kid when it aired in Saturday mornings.
Yeah,
so I guess that was my Godzilla cartoon.
Yeah, I love that show too as a kid. The influence,
we'll get a full series set.
And the influence to the 98 series is like very apparent too. They basically follow the same plot of like a team on a ship, and they travel with Godzilla. There was like a comedy relief like little critter as in Nigel. Nigel's basically the Godzuki of the series, right? And then they fight a new monster every week, and it's really cool. It's really cool. And then now we have Singular Point paying homage to both of those series.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Yeah. So that was a really nice surprise, because obviously I follow all the Japanese stuff. So you're watching Singular Point, and you're like, holy cow! Someone actually acknowledged the 98 Godzilla series. It's a nice touch. Right. It's like I have no idea who's responsible for that, but I'm grateful. It was just a nice as one Godzilla artist to another kind of acknowledgement.
Right.
It's like I said, it was just good memories. I working on the show just. It was a good team. A lot of them gone on to do a lot of good stuff. Like most of them ended up. Sony was kind of like you would have long layouts. Like sometimes you would work on like 3 or 4 shows in a row, and then it might be 6 months before your next gig. So you were like, go home and find something else to do, or whatever. And so a lot of people went over to Warner Brothers because Warner Brothers was always doing something, and ended up doing a lot of the. If you look at the like directors and artists that worked on a lot of the DC Universe animated stuff, you'll start seeing names from the Godzilla series.
And you're from Burbank, I believe.
What was that?
Are you from Burbank?
Oh, I lived in Culver City, right near the studio when I was working on the show.
I used to live in Burbank, so that's why I was asking. But
okay,
I know there's a lot of like
Burbank pretty well because I used to, would go over for the recording sessions sometimes, and obviously you go over for Universal or just I had friends in Burbank and all that, so yeah, I know the area well. But the main animation studio was in Culver City for the show. The recording studios were in Burbank, and then obviously they would ship the stuff overseas to Japan and Korea. I think were the animation studios were.
Right.
And it was mainly I ended up because I got hired for the job and I had to move to Los Angeles for the show. I ended up finding an apartment that was walking distance to this animation studio, so I could just leave my car. Did try to just find squeeze into a spot somewhere, and it was convenient because you could sleep in, all those good things. Get up and walk 2 blocks and you're at work. So also when I wanted to find reference, you could just dash home and look at Godzilla. get a DVD or something and find what you're looking for, and then run back, try to match a shot or something like that,
LA is a
So
awesome place to live, or for the most part anyway.
yeah, I love that whole area. Is just Burbank, Santa Monica, Hollywood. It's just, there's so much stuff to do, and there's so many great places to go. And like I said, they would do a lot of. I was there at a really peak time because it was right around Godzilla's 50th anniversary, building up to that. So there were lots of film festivals, doing things like the 50th anniversary, run to the original film, and the Final Wars premiere, and working on the animated show. It was all kind of in that, between Godzilla 98 and 2004. It was just like, lots of Godzilla and Ultraman and Japanese monster stuff going on. So it was really cool. Fun time to be there. It's cool. The one thing is I like is and I think it was kind of my big disappointment in a way with the 98 film is, I love the Toho stuff, but there was a part of me that always wanted to see what Godzilla would look like with, the top line technology and a gigantic budget. And the 98 film, because it was so different design, you didn't really get that. And so the 2014, particularly the 2019, where they modified Godzilla a bit, gave the proper fins and fixed the feet a bit. I'm like, all right, finally, it was 20 years after Godzilla 98, but I wanted to see, and I've there's things obviously I think each artist would probably tweak things on it. I'd like the head to be bigger and things like that on the new design, the Monsterverse one, but it's it's close enough to the Toho look that I'm like, all right, I got to see the Godzilla with the top of the line digital effects.
Yeah, so I think that ties it off. I always ask this: is there anything you guys want to plug, Keith? I know Keith runs SciFi Japan. I want everyone to check that out. Well, I'm sure everyone knows about SciFi Japan right now. It's a household name for kaiju fans at this point. But is there anything else you'd like to plug?
I hope so.
We work hard. Like you said, obviously SciFi Japan's the big one. We're going through a site redesign that kind of held things up, but I'm going to be posting more content on a much more regular basis going forward. We've got a lot coming from the different studios on that. I'm working with Mill Creek on the Ultraman stuff. Been doing that for the past 4 years.
God, has it really been that long?
Wow.
Yeah, they got the license in 2019.
Oh my God.
We just finished the first batch of releases. We're going to be doing things like a Ultra 7 55th anniversary set. So it's going to be like a best of set. And so I'm working on that now. That'll come out this summer. And then I'm talking to them. Mill Creek, Ultraman has done very well for them. So Mill Creek's looking into licensing more stuff from Tsuburaya, seeing depending on what's available. It just depends because some stuff's been licensed elsewhere or is not available because of certain contractual issues in the U.S. or whatever. So we have to see what they have. I'm also now talking to Mill Creek about other Japanese titles that are currently not available on Blu-ray or DVD, without getting into specifics because we're real early in that. Just stuff I think fans would really like to see, things that other companies have released but it's long out of print or has never been released on 4K or Blu-ray or whatever the case may be. In the past, I'd worked with them on like Mothra, the Steelbook set, and the Gamera sets they did. Recently, they're all available now, but I worked with the Arrow Video on their Gamera big box set, the Daimajian set, and then the Yokai Monster set.
I have all three of those. That Gamera one's like my holy grail. It's my child.
That might be the best release I've ever seen for like this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they went and got everything they could possibly get their hands on, and then did the things like the commentaries and everything. Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful set. Like
I said, I did help a little bit advertising the Mill Creek set. I had to design the website and I think were you involved? I don't remember. My memory is very fuzzy. Were you involved in Ultraman Day? Like, did I have you? Were you supposed to talk on there? I remember. I know like a few of the live shows got canceled.
Mill Creek's main involvement. It was kind of a weird thing. Like they didn't approach Mill Creek till late. So Mill Creek's main involvement was that they did. I guess they got Blu-rays signed by the original cast, like some of the members of the original cast for Ultraman, and they gave those away as like prizes.
Right.
But it was like a quick last minute thing where they had to ship stuff to Japan because that's where the main cast would be Q&A'd, and then they signed stuff, and I think they end up doing the giveaways there.
And I know because it sucks that Ultraman Day wasn't as good as it should have been, because I think that was the first time was it ever, or like the first time in like since premiering or whatever, was that original Ultraman stage show Mill Creek managed to recover and release on DVD. So yeah,
well, that was one of the things when they brought me on to work on Ultraman, they knew I was a fan, and I was talking to them about things like get that stage show, it's never been released in the US, so fans who already have seen the Ultraman regular series haven't seen that, or at least not an official subtitled version of that. It might have been floating around as a bootleg. But it was a lot of stuff. My main thing, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know it's getting late, but it's tracking down the dubs for the Ultraman shows, which has been much more difficult than I ever expected.
The Ultra 7 Hawaiian dub.
Yeah, those are like considered lost. I have like 2 or 3 episodes on VHS from the Hawaiian one. But like, for example, with the original series, Tsuburaya made master tapes of the English dubs that are like complete, and like, sound quality is great.
Right.
Then Tsuburaya was bought by one company, and then they were bought by a second company, and they moved, and things got showed, and like half of those tapes disappeared.
Yep, and then there's that banned episode from Ultra 7, which is also a pain in the ass. I don't even think, because I remember when I was doing the Ultraman stuff, I don't even think they allowed that episode or a monster to even be licensed.
No,
they never even like allowed us to license that.
I actually, when I wrote the text booklet for the Ultra 7 set, and wrote a piece explaining why that wasn't included, and I tried to keep it as as safely written as possible, so it would be non-offensive. And it got cut. They just didn't even want to acknowledge.
Didn't happen. We're talking. You're talking crazy right now. Never happened.
Episode 11 and then episode 13, and I'm like, they're going to say, why is there a skip? And I wrote like a paragraph that just said, there was a thing here. It offended some people. They decided just to play it safe. This episode's been pulled from rotation. It was like as basic as and but yeah, it's just like, what are you going to do? That's the kind of stuff where, as a fan, I'd love to have that episode in there. It's just nothing I can do about it, And so,
because I think enough time has passed where people would probably understand, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but it's like they haven't released it in Japan. They've kept it pulled. So I think as long as it's not available there, they don't want it here for reverse importing. Is basically the concern. So,
well, anyway, that's been No Croissant episode 3. And sign off. David, Nick, and Keith.
I'm David. I'm a host of Talking Toku. We just came back with our Shin Ultraman review. That's out right now. Feel free to go take a listen. We're on all podcast platforms. But we're on Spotify. We're on Google Podcasts. That's probably the ones people use the most. So we'll be on YouTube very soon as well.
Yep. And on mine, I do a podcast called the Visionary Dawn Podcast, where we bring on creatives and other different people from different industries on, and we just interview them about their little projects and their life work that they've done. I interviewed Chris recently, about finished editing with that episode, and we're going to upload it here pretty soon. And I also run the Godzilla 98 Facebook group page.
Of course. And then, of course, Keith. Any final words?
Well, I just want to say thanks for the invite. Hope I was entertaining and informative.
No problem.
And please check out SciFiJapan.com and the Mill Creek Ultraman stuff. And we said I had fun. It was like, this stuff goes by so fast.
Yeah.
So I mean, here we are 2+ hours later.
Literally. But hey, it was a pleasure having you on, Keith.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
We've been friends on.
Post it as we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
Like I said, when you guys are ready to run it, I'll post a link on Sci-Fi Japan. Help me get the word out. And,
that'd be great. Yeah.
I mean,
thank you guys. It was a lot of fun.
Keith, I think we've been friends on Facebook for close to 10 years, and I think this past 2 weeks was the first time I ever spoke to you. So
hey, reach out anytime. It's like You know, you get working on stuff. Sometimes, like you're working on projects, you kind of, I'm like I said, I'm not always the best with social media. I do the Facebook page for the Sci-Fi Japan.
Right.
Like my own personal Facebook page, I don't think I've updated in a year.
Yeah.
You know, it's like people don't need to know what I'm having for lunch. You know, I mean, that kind of stuff. It's, you know, I'm sure no one cares. So you know, but said, you know, reach out. You've got my email. You've got, you know how to reach to me on YouTube, or I mean on Facebook. You know, if there's something I can help with, you know, just let me know. I'll see what I can do.
Of course.
And don't be strangers. It was a pleasure talking to all three of you guys. So,
Nice talking to you too, Keith.
Absolutely.
All right, cool.
and good luck with the podcast. I hope it, you know, does really well for you guys going forward. I will check out the Godzilla 98 page if I haven't already. Just do me a favor and send me a link to that. So
All right. Oh,
I was following a couple of them for a while, but you know, because there's not a lot of new content. There was the Facebook pages tend to dry up pretty quickly.
Of course.
So, but if you've got an active one, send me a link and I'd be happy to. You know, I can go in there and I can answer questions about the show and
Right.
stuff. I'd be happy to do that.
and make sure to join Jonathan Tchaikovsky's new prototype group. He keeps
Oh,
reminding
yeah.
me to
Jonathan's,
remind you about it. So,
I will do that. I have to you know, find the link for that too. Jonathan's a really good guy. He's
Yeah,
and
he's
he's
next.
very enthusiastic.
He's
he's next
yeah.
on the show.
Yeah, so
But that's for next time,
He
right?
can, David, if you, I gotta warn you, David. Jonathan can talk his head off.
Okay.
So I will be doing that too. Oh man, yeah. Anyway, nice talking to you guys. Appreciate it. This has been No Croissant, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
all right. Bye guys.